Go ahead.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of On the Horizon, a weekly morning video cast from my partner, Mike Lieberman, and I, co-founders and partners at Square 2 Marketing. If you've been following us for the last couple of weeks, the essence of our show is simply to give entrepreneurs and marketers an insight into what's coming down the pike when the new normal sits in. We've talked now for about 3.5 weeks about how the old normal is dead, and anybody who pines for the old days is going to be left behind because businesses are flexing, pivoting, and rethinking the way they go to market based on the pandemic that we're all living through. So thanks so much for taking out some precious time of your day. Today's topic is return on investment. Yesterday, I was in the meeting with a few entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneur was describing how he has a new service he wants to go to market with. Great, that's marketing. He went through a series of interviews with different agencies, and the one that he chose specialized in public relations and social media. Well, that's great. There's a big place in the marketer's toolkit for public relations and social media, but I asked him what his ultimate goals were. And his goals were to sell as many of these engagements of remote IT services that he possibly can. I said, well, how many engagements would be success? He says, if I had 2 a month, man, that would be amazing. So I said, well, the agency that you're leaning towards, did they demonstrate to you that there's a clear path between today and 24 engagements a year from now? 2 a month would be great, times 12, 24 engagements. He said, no, they really talked a lot of things about reach and how many people they could connect with. So we said, well, that's very good, especially when you're looking at the stages of the buyer's journey, is to reach as many people with your story as possible. But unfortunately, that doesn't pay the bills. And we had a relatively brief but deep conversation about return on investment. The magic number that we shoot for is 10 to 1. If you invest $1 into marketing, you should get a minimum of $10 back in return. And the reason that is because with digital tools, it becomes quite easy for us to get a high return on marketing investment. The challenge is that people don't know how to calculate it, they don't know what to ask for, and they certainly don't know how to track and test to make sure that the program they're on is generating the results they're looking for. So in today's episode, we hope to give you a little more insight in how this new normal will drive more pressure on your demand for return on investment and how you can achieve that. Back to you, Mike.
Yeah, so I have a slightly different perspective on ROI, and obviously you want to try to invest money and make sure that it generates some kind of return on the back end, but you're really talking about a very complicated set of calculations from an ROI perspective. Like almost every business owner and every CEO we talk to says, oh, I'm happy to spend $10,000 a month with you if I get $100,000 back in business. Well, of course, that makes sense, but if they're asking us to generate leads and their salespeople are taking those leads and trying to close those leads, where is the real connection to ROI, right? We're not working with those sales reps. We haven't influenced their sales process. We don't, they haven't taken into consideration that they have an 18-month sales cycle. So I think when you're talking about ROI from a marketing perspective, it makes sense to try to break it down into some more manageable pieces. For instance, if we spend the money to create a white paper and we publish it, then yeah, there should be an ROI on the investment of that in terms of the number of people it causes to come to our website and the number of leads that are generated and the potential business created from those leads. Whether those leads turn into business or not is actually the responsibility of the sales team in this scenario that I'm painting for you. So, you know, you can easily calculate the value of that lead. And if we've created enough leads based on their value to justify the investment in that white paper, then you have positive ROI. But the complicating factors associated with ROI from a marketing perspective are mammoth and generally become an obstacle for people investing in marketing. When you buy a new car, do you ask what the ROI is going to be? No.
Nope.
You're buying a car because you need it. You need it to get to work. You need it to see your friends. You need it to go to the grocery store. You need it to get around and live your life. And I think to some extent, you have to start thinking about marketing in the same way. You need it, right? Does it have to be efficient? Does it have to work correctly? Does it have to be reliable? Like those are all similar things that you're expecting from your vehicle. Those are all similar things should be expecting from your marketing. So yes, it has to produce leads. If you have marketing that isn't filling up the top of your sales process and arming your company with the amount of opportunities it's needing, it's not working. But in terms of calculating an exact ROI, talking about a very complex set of calculations and activities that need to go into that just make it a very complex exercise. Not impossible, but complex. And I think you need to consider that when you're actually looking and making that statement to anyone who's either going to be helping you with marketing, or you're hiring for marketing, or you're thinking about investing in marketing. To some extent, it's just something that your business needs to do.
It's true. Mike, let's take a look at the cyclonic buyer's journey, because to your point, there's a lot of metrics that aren't related to revenue that could be judged as people move from one cyclone to another. Let's take the folks through that now and then give them some key metrics in between each one of those that they can start to think about how they're getting a return on each stage of the buyer's journey. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that'd be fine. So I think that's a better way to think about whether your marketing is working or not. Again, I think this is not a question about like, did I get an ROI for my investment, but is my marketing working to the level that I expected to or better? So if you want to look at the buyer journey and you want to start at the very beginning of the buyer journey, then you're talking about people who didn't know you, who you're introducing to your business. So to some extent, some of the metrics that you'd be looking at there are new email addresses in your database. I started the month with 1,000. I now have 1,200. That's a 20% improvement in the number of people I can now talk to going forward in my marketing. That would be a very positive metrics for early buyer journey performance of your marketing.
Hey, Mike, why don't you describe the steps of the journey? Because I've, as usual, prepared some data along each step of the way.
Oh,
So
and would you like to comment at each stage too?
No, you're talking about the pre-awareness stage. So you've already said you're introducing yourself to folks that aren't aware of your service or even know that they have a problem, right?
Right.
So some of the metrics you might look at if you're targeting those folks are the amount of targeted individuals that are in that universe that you're going after. How many of them connected, open your emails, answered your cold calls, open up the UPS package you sent them in order to introduce yourself. How many of those people engage out of the universe that you're attacking? And then I have lists of lots of other ones, but the key ones are going to be how many people are now introduced to your service. Now that they're introduced to your service, Mike, take us through what the awareness category is.
Sure. So when you're in awareness, you obviously have people who are interested in your business and aware that you have products and services that help them. So a great metric for the awareness stage is increase in visitors to your website, because obviously those people are finding you and they're ending up on your website. And once that happens, you have a whole new set of audience participants that you can start to engage with. For instance, making sure that your website is sticky enough so that they visit more than one page. Make sure that they don't bounce off. Make sure that they spend an extended time on your website. And ultimately, make sure they convert from anonymous visitor into identified lead. So they're giving you their contact information, which allows us to run a whole new set of marketing motions at the next stage of the buyer journey.
So I agree. The key metric there is search, and not only search, but organic search, because you can jimmy the numbers a little bit by doing paid, right? Drive people to your website by paid. But the real essence of the metric that you want in the awareness stage is how many people are actually out there looking for your service and find you. Talk a little bit about how we could juice some of those SEO results, Mike.
Sure. So Google and the search engines are constantly changing their algorithms, so it is a bit of a moving target, but couple of signals that you want to make sure your website is signaling. Remember, Google doesn't rank websites, it ranks web pages. So start to think about your website from a page perspective. What pages am I building to rank for certain keywords? But the signals you want to send Google is, A, when people land on your page, they click. That click is a key signal to Google that the searcher found what they were looking for on your page. So if you have a page that they're visiting and not clicking on, that's sending a negative signal to Google. Time on the page is another signal to Google. If they're spending a lot of time on your page, then Google is also recognizing that as a page that is delivering value to its users. So again, this is why long pillar pages with a lot of interesting content tend to rank well, as opposed to short type pages. So again, pages with a lot of information, with a lot of links, this is a very highly rankable page for Google, and that's signaling them that this page is of value. Also, Um, that's one of the reasons why we suggest video as well for those pages, because obviously if they're stopping to watch a 2 or 3 minute video, they might be spending a good additional chunk of time on that page, which helps in the ranking. So clicks and time on site lower that bounce rate. Both of those things lower the bounce rate, time on site and clicks. So those are 3 areas that you can really focus in on, making sure that those pages perform highly, and Google sees those signals and then will rank your page highly.
So tell us a little bit about the education stage. Now I found someone, I'm at a website that I'm enjoying. What is the education stage?
So education is generally all about content and what content you're providing people. So if you think about your own educational journey when you're going to buy something, you tend to just looking for information. You want to be smarter about the purchase you're going to make. If I'm going to buy a car, well, what are the consumer reports on this car, and what are the features that this car has, and how much does this car cost? Like, you're going to try to learn all those things in order to continue to be interested in that vehicle. The same thing works for your businesses. How do I pick the right company in your space? Tell me some information about how your product services are going to help me. Help me make a good choice. So educate me about what I'm looking for when I'm in that buyer journey. So you really want to educate them in a most robust and 360-degree perspective as possible. You want to consider that people digest educational information differently. So you want a wide variety of educational information. You really want to lean into your personas. So we use this scenario a lot. If you're marketing to accountants and engineers, they like to read reports and they like data. So you want to lean your content more towards the kind of information that those people like. If you're trying to do business with marketing people, they tend to like pictures and visuals and creative types of content. So you want to lean your content that way. But you want to think about having video, having graphical content, having report type content, slideshows. There's so many different things, even podcasting, right? Podcast is a huge source of educational information now, simply because of the way we digest audio information. I can download a podcast. I can listen to it in my car. I can listen to it when I'm on a run. I can listen to it, my back patio while I'm mowing the lawn. So there are so many ways that you can digest that audio information. You want to really stretch the spectrum of content type and make sure that educational content is delivered in that way too. And then track that to see which types of content gets downloaded more frequently, which type of content converts more frequently, which type of content drives a better lead. So there's a lot of metrics. And again, if we're going to talk about tracking whether marketing is performing or not, you can really start to lean into that type of content and that type of educational information that is performing better.
Got it. So far we have 3 stages: pre-awareness, how many people we connected with in the universe; awareness, how many people actually came to our website through search; and now the key ROI indicator we should be looking at for education is how many downloads of our pieces of content, and a much deeper analysis of that. So now I'm thinking that the firm I found and their website is pretty good. I'm in the consideration stage. Mike, due to time, give us a brief description of what consideration, and I'll do the metric.
Sure. Consideration is basically just, look, I've decided I want to hire this type of company. I've decided I want to buy this type of product. I've decided I want to do, this exact thing. Now I've narrowed my search down to like these few contenders, and I'm going to really dig into those contenders.
So from a return on investment perspective, one of the key metrics you can look at to see if it's working or not is how many of your MQLs, marketing qualified leads, have now converted into sales qualified leads. We could have a whole session on lead scoring, but one of the tools in HubSpot that we enjoy implementing is lead scoring to let us know how those people are progressing through the funnel and how they're increasing their score, getting closer and closer to a sale. So the key metric in the consideration stage is definitely MQLs to SQLs. Now I've decided, Mike, I like this firm. I want to evaluate them more. Give us a little bit of information on the evaluation stage.
Well, evaluation is all about turning sales qualified leads into opportunities. So, now we're going to basically hand this opportunity over to the sales reps. And this is where your ROI gets a little trickier because you now have to deal with the sales organization. But this is really about sales' ability to take an opportunity and turn it into business. So can they turn a sales qualified lead into an opportunity? Can they turn that opportunity into what we typically call like a proposal submission or a recommendation submission? Can they really take it to that final stage? And there are a whole set of metrics and tools associated with what they're going to be doing that you want to track from an ROI perspective as well. This is where CRM is critical. If you don't have a CRM, you're really going to lose the insight into the metrics from a sales rep perspective.
Sure. And a great example that we use internally at Square 2 Marketing is the discovery call. Anybody that wants to talk with our firm about their marketing can schedule a free discovery call. And what we look at is how many of those discovery calls qualify in to get to the next level where we could actually start to do that proposal. So great idea there, Mike. Okay, now I'm into rationalization. I found a firm that I want. Tell us about rationalization.
Yeah, rationalization is basically about continuing that sales process from taking the company that has decided they want to hire you and making sure they have all the information they need to make a good decision. The questions that they're asking typically are, how much does it cost? When can I get it? Who am I going to be working with? These are all like rationalization questions that people need to make to be comfortable with a purchase. And the metrics there are really the sales cycle. If the sales cycle is taking too long, you may have an issue in the rationalization stage of the decision-making process. So you want to benchmark sales cycle and make sure that that stage of that part of it is as compressed as possible.
One of my favorite metrics from an ROI perspective, Mike, in there is how many of our prospective clients are asking for references? Because then you know they're going deep. If they really want to talk to someone, they're leaning towards choosing your firm. Okay, now we've done all this work. We're in the decision phase. Mike, summarize that for us.
It's simple. How many people are saying yes to you? And the most common metric here is close rate. So again, this is really a sales-oriented metric. If your reps can't close, then you should have a close rate in the 10% range. And you may have a sales process issue as well, because you really shouldn't be giving proposals and agreements and recommendations to people unless they're ready to say yes. You should be looking at a close rate in the 70 to 80% rate.
I was working with a client the other day, and I introduced them to the concept of tracking how many days from the issuance of the proposal to the time that it closed. A little bit of a subtle nuance there, but really important, because if your deals are closing quickly, then you know you're saying and doing the right things and you're in the right ballpark. So finally, Mike, a lot of people forget about this last stage, which is ongoing delivery. Explain to the viewers what that's all about.
Right. So, if you're not focusing on keeping your customers and clients happy, you're going to have a problem with your cyclonic revenue, cyclonic buyer journey. All that work to get those leads and to get those opportunities and to turn them into customers is going to be a failure if your delivery team or your customer service side of your business is not providing and producing happy customers. So net promoter score, referral rates, referenceable customers, those are all really good metrics to know that delivery is performing.
And from a revenue perspective, repeat orders, ordering more than one of your lines or offerings are also really good indicators to make sure that you're doing a good job in the post-sale. So now we've taken about 20 minutes to really talk to you about all these little metrics that you could be following in your business. There's an overwhelming amount of metrics, as Mike mentioned earlier. Pick one for each stage of the cyclonic buyer's journey, assign the teams that work on those to follow those, report on those on a monthly, if not more frequently rate, so that you can apply your limited resources in your company to making those metrics go up.
Yeah, and I'll just wrap up with, look, we said ROI was complicated, but if you're tracking these metrics on a monthly basis and every month it's up and to the right, I guarantee you'll see ROI. You don't have to worry about our ROI particularly. You just have to worry about making these metrics go up every month. Thanks so much for joining us. I apologize for the technical difficulties at the start of the show. The show will be recorded and posted on the On Horizon page of our website if you want to check it out later. Thanks so much. Have a good day, and we'll be back here tomorrow.